Welcome to BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast. We're joined by judges and legal professionals to discuss emerging trends, regulatory updates, and the latest headlines. We'll provide tips to help your law firms and legal departments make the most out of legal technology. I'm Daniel Gold, BDO Principal and eDiscovery Managed Services Leader.
And I'm Eric Dirk, BDO's Managing Director of Legal Operations. Let's get started with this episode's exciting discussion.
And welcome back to another BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast. I'm very excited because today we are joined by none other than Kate Barton. Kate is the global CEO of Dentons, the world's largest law firm, where she leads global strategy and operations, focusing on client service, talent development, and of course, business growth. Kate, welcome to the program. We are so happy to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Kate, when I looked at your bio, there is so much that is happening in your bio. You have served on several different boards, 3 different nonprofits. You hold advisory roles at different colleges, different higher education institutions. You hold several different degrees, and you have also, amongst the different degrees, you've also completed the executive programs at not just Kellogg, but also Harvard. You are NACD Director Certified. You qualified as a financial expert under SEC, NYSE, and NASDAQ rules. And you are, without a question, Kate, a leader in both the business as well as legal sectors. I don't know if I've missed anything, but I'm going to go with I've covered pretty much the gambit there, Kate. Is that right?
I think you nailed it, Daniel. Thank you.
Well, you have such a fascinating career trajectory, and you were the global vice chair for Ernst & Young, EY, and now you are the CEO. That is such a fascinating transfer from spending, I think it was, we talked about it in the pre-show, about over 3 decades over at EY. Talk to us about that transition from EY over to CEO of the world's largest law firm. What was the decision-making process look like? It's fascinating. Kate, tell us more.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I have really had such a fun time with my career. So I was 38 years with EY. I'd like to say I started at age 13, but I would be fibbing if I said that. But I started as an intern, worked my way up to partner, and then into different leadership roles and enjoyed it. I ended up in my last role as global vice chair of the tax and law business, and it was really exciting. We have a mandatory retirement age at EY, and I hit that magic number. And so I took a little bit of a gap year and explored other opportunities. And I thought I was going to do 100% board service. And I got this amazing opportunity where I got to meet the wonderful world of Dentons. And I went through a long interview process, but it was terrific because I got to meet the people and really learn a lot about the firm through that process. And I really got sold. And I think we both decided it was going to be a terrific match. And so I'm 9 months into my new role and very excited to be at Dentons. One of the reasons that I chose Dentons, and I think Dentons chose me, is we both love to be with a challenger brand. Dentons really stands for doing law differently than the competition. And so they were looking for this next stage for a leader that could come in. We had 2 amazing founders that really came up with this great idea to create Dentons, and we're forever grateful. And now this stage of where we are in the journey is really one of globalization. And, I've had a lot of experience in that. And I thought, wow, I think my experience could be very relevant to Dentons. And I only want to work on things that I can add value. And that makes sense. And from their perspective, again, they wanted somebody who had that experience, and it sort of fits with their challenger brand, taking the risk, doing something different. I know I've heard from so many people in the industry, they were in shock that a big global law firm, the world's largest law firm, would look for somebody that's sort of a non-traditional pick to lead their great business. And so far, we're having a lot of fun together. And so I think it's a good marriage.
One of the things, Kate, that I find fascinating about your background, and we talked about this before the recording, is using your influence instead of your authority. And I want to say that again because it's so interesting. Using your influence instead of your authority. Your approach to people management is very interesting. Can you expand upon this approach and how you've been able to leverage it for driving a group of people in such a big collective effort?
Sure. Daniel, I would say that I've learned a lot through the years, through trial and error. And I think one of the things one of my mentors once pointed out to me is the minute you're using your authoritative leadership style, which is, telling people what to do and expecting them to follow it, you're losing. And so it really stuck with me. And so I really tried to get people to see the why and use my influence and see if I can't bring people along on the journey so that they're making the decision to do what I'm suggesting, but they're part of that decision. And so they feel very involved. They understand the business case for it, what I'm seeing, very data driven. The more data we show, particularly I'm finding that here with our great lawyers, they like to look at data and just get convinced. And if I can do that, take the time, you get better answers and you get more fellowship. And so influence is the key. No one likes to be told what to do. The minute you're telling someone what to do, right, it takes your energy away. So the more that you can influence them, you just get better results. I always allocate like 2 hours to connect with people that I haven't, send a little note. I also make it sort of my gratitude hour, like who didn't I thank this week that did something extraordinary that's on my team, or I want to just send a little note, somebody needs to pick me up. So I think sometimes if you do put in your calendar a couple of hours to, what client haven't I connected for in a while? Who haven't I thanked properly for the week? How can I show my gratitude? It gets you into a better weekend mode. I feel better about my week. And so, just being strategic with your time. Our time is our biggest asset. And sometimes we can just get really beholden to the calendar and let the calendar dictate every second. But, you do need to put strategic time in your calendar to do some of these things and to make sure that you're doing both, connecting with clients and thanking team members.
You have unknowingly tapped into probably the core of what is Daniel Gold just now. So one of the things that I do as well, Kate, is that I also put into my calendar, I block out time to make sure that I have gratitude scheduled in my calendar. And we have monthly all hands calls, and it's actually slated in the agenda for these all hands calls is Daniel's gratitude corner. And during that gratitude corner, both myself, but more importantly, other team members find opportunities to provide gratitude to other team members for something they did throughout the course of the week or the month, the day, whatever it was. And what I've been trying to teach the team is that creates a virtuous cycle of gratitude or virtuous cycle of happiness, something that many different authors, including Sean Aker, has talked about before. And I'd love for you to touch on it because you do this, and it's better to come from you, Kate, than from just me. Why is it that scheduling time for gratitude is, number one, so important? And why is it, hard coding in your calendar, space? I'll call it white space. Why is that so important?
For me, I find that I might forget to do it. And it's just, you get so caught up in the crisis of the hour. And, that is certainly happening as I lead this great organization, 86 countries, 170 offices. There is always something going on. So if I don't allocate just a little time to reflect, like I said, who do I want to connect with? What have I missed strategically? And then who haven't I thanked? Or like I said, maybe somebody who needs a little nice note, a little psychic income pickup. I just might not get to it. And so it's so simple. And when I do that, I find a little of that white space helps me be a little more reflective and try to do some of these strategic things that matter so much to the recipient. And I feel better. I feel better because I hate to be selfish, but it does make me feel better when I do things like that. I really think that now is a critical time where a lot of our clients and companies around the world are looking for lawyers that are really trusted business advisors. And so we're trying to help our whole fleet just stay really current, make sure they have what they need, because the demand is really critical. I mean, everyone's trying to figure out what they do with their supply chains, what they do with their people. There are so many issues, as you well know. We won't go through all of them, but we're all dealing with it. And, in a time of enormous change, I think that sometimes where you work can be a grounding place where you know what's expected. And the more that you can communicate how we're handling an issue, the better off you are. So like having tight communications, really leaning into that team. I'm blessed to have a great communications team. It helps really greatly. So I do a lot of listening to podcasts. So every morning I start my day, I usually try to do a twofer. I'll do my exercise at the same time that I'm catching up, listening to The Economist, or, a whole bunch of different things that I start my morning off with, so that I also am in tune to what's going on, so I haven't missed anything. And I think that's a commitment that I was always taught as a young associate, to make sure that you're doing your business reading. At the time, that was more popular than a podcast. And thank God we have podcasts and we can be doing our treadmill or whatever it is that we like to do. And, you get two things done with one activity, which is terrific. So I find that just a great way to stay on top of things.
I think that there's a whole separate episode here where we can talk about daily habits for success as leaders. I love this. Are there specific tactics that you recommend for global firms to harmonize between different regulatory standards around the world, particularly related to data privacy and technology? There are so many challenges that are happening right now, and we are seeing very, very fast changes, faster than I've seen in the last 20-something years now being in the business. What do you recommend?
So I think it's a really interesting time in the world where maybe in my earlier days, I would have said harmonization is like the end goal. But, at Dentons, we consider our law firm polycentric. And, what that means is we really don't have any one corporate headquarters. When we're 86 countries, all the countries' laws and regulations matter, and some of them are very different. And so are leaning into the balance right now of what we need to have at, global, and what we need to sort of lean in on the local side, because, the differences are great, and we need to make sure that we don't over egg to one country's rules and regulations at the expense of other thinking or other laws and regs. Does that make sense? So, we skate that balance, and I think it puts us in good stead. We're redefining what polycentric means right now at Dentons. We're coming up with polycentric 2.0. 2.0s seem to be popular right now. But I think there's an aspect right now that every global organization needs. How do you balance that local? Because maybe again in the 80s and the 90s, we thought harmony and having a single standard was the right way to go. I'm not so sure right now that is the way to go. So conflicts are a really big deal in law firms. They were in an accounting firm as well, but a lot of the accounting firm conflicts were mainly commercial conflicts, M&A deals, and, on what side were you going to be getting clearances and waivers, et cetera. So we managed them. I mean, obviously there were times that everybody would be a bit disappointed we couldn't do something for a client that we would have liked to. But in a law firm, there's more, because we have truly legal bar conflicts. So we have, regulatory conflicts right in the laws that we operate in. Again, being in 86 countries, it's a pretty complex area. And then we have obviously the commercial conflicts as well. Different clients, if you're representing them, they don't want you to represent XYZ. So we're navigating them. I think having a really great global conflicts team, like everything, as a CEO, you're only as good as the teams that are around you. And so just having sharp people who can take a look, make sure that we explain. I think if someone is going to be disappointed and not be able to do work that they would like to, the art of the explanation can't be underestimated. And, understanding the why this happened, maybe what we could do differently, how we could still do the work if we could get a waiver, just spending the time to walk people through, because as you can imagine, everybody wants to serve their clients and gets quite cranky if it's not, they don't get the outcome that they might like. So I do spend a lot of time as the global CEO, not a lot, but, just the bigger ones will come my way. And we just have to adjudicate them and be true to our values and make sure we do the right thing.
I love that expression, the art of the explanation. I think that's right on. Speaking of the art of explanation, Kate, when we're looking at, amongst many changes that we're talking about, data privacy, artificial intelligence, or maybe more specifically, generative artificial intelligence, both in an accounting firm, but more so, I think, in a law firm. There's a lot of ethical considerations at play for how to be able to deal with AI and how to be able to deal with AI, not just domestically, but also internationally, because how, the patchwork of data privacy laws here in the United States is much different than it is obviously globally. And then therefore, how we approach AI as a whole is going to be very different. So from your perspective, what are some of those ethical considerations that we should all be aware of as a global CEO and needing to be innovative, but also having to balance, risk and ethics, et cetera?
Right. Daniel, there's so many things, and yet our younger lawyers are clamoring to use tools, and our clients ask about it all the time. I was at a meeting down in Houston, and the global CEO said, what's happening? I want to make sure that my legal department is cutting edge on the use of AI. What are you doing in your law firm? And, so it's not an uncommon question. And I think everything is a balance. First, we want all of our lawyers to play safe. So we want to make sure that the tools that we're using are, cyber secure, and that we're putting data into places where we can make sure that it's not going everywhere that it shouldn't. And so it's going to be data secure. And so we've spent a lot of time on that. We are, democratizing the use of the tools. We're telling our lawyers that they own the results. So they have to double check it. Just like if you were working with a staff associate, we want them to take the responsibility of reviewing the work. So, we can't have any hallucinations, if you will, or, going up the chain or out to the client. That would be, not great for our brand and just not acceptable in any way. And so, just coming up with the proper safeguards, the proper protocols, but not squelching innovation. And we do need to be innovative. Our clients expect that. And I do think innovation comes, and it doesn't have to be a younger associate. It really can be anyone who's interested in artificial intelligence. And we're looking to spend more time on popular use cases that we see the use cases being somewhat similar amongst countries. Like we used it for XYZ aspect in the law, and then we'll put more effort in there. I guess I've learned a lot through the years about, I always say I want to be on the cutting edge of technology, but not the bleeding edge of technology. And, because it can be quite expensive to be too far in advance. So we want to get that right, but we also want it to be innovation on a client so that, we actually know it will work and it will solve a client critical issue. So that's kind of what we're up to, and many other aspects in the back office as well to get more efficient, as you can imagine. But I think it's the way of the future. I think with big technological changes like this, we have to lean into them. You can't lean back and say you're not going to participate. I think being an ostrich, head in the sand is not a good idea as it relates to AI, particularly generative AI. So I have, a couple of tools on my machines, if you will. And again, I'm like a once a week person. Like, did I use it? And if not, why not? But I've enjoyed sometimes looking up things, ChatGPT, I'm trying to experiment myself. I don't want to be the antiquated leader who doesn't know. The other one, and I don't know if I should mention brands, but I've tried a couple of different tools because it just makes sense. And people will rave about one, and I'm like, I'll try that and see if I see a big difference. So I'm a novice. I won't say that I'm, in the advanced club or what have you, but I have gotten good output from experimenting and tinkering at my level too.
Legal teams are struggling to manage resources, maintain compliance, and adopt new technologies. BDO's legal operations team can help. We enhance efficiency, reduce costs, and support compliance so you can run your legal department like a business. Schedule a meeting with us today at BDO.com.
When I look at attorneys, and I can say this as being one of them, we've always been on the right-hand side of Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovations curve, right? If you think about it, there are rules about the type of font and margins to submit to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, et cetera, right? There's a lot of tradition involved. And so, but what I found interesting is that there's only been really two inflection points in the last, let's say 25 years for lawyers. And this is just my impression. One of them was when, I will say, a very popular mobile phone came out, right? And all of a sudden, everybody wanted everything law related had to have an app for this particular mobile phone. And it was like what everybody needed. And when a tablet version of it came out, everybody needed it. So there's one. Then Gen AI came out. And now all of a sudden, we went from being a laggard to like, oh, we want so many people to be early adopters, et cetera. I'm wondering, Kate, based on what you said before is about allowing there to be this room to innovate, right? Not restriction, not restricting innovation. Is there a particular motivator for Dentons to want to innovate? Is it really client driven, or is it that the lawyers themselves at the firm want to be innovating for the sake of innovating because they feel like they can drive efficiency or be more productive or lawyer differently, perhaps?
I think it's both. So yes, our clients are asking about it. Our clients are expecting it. I think at first, clients were saying, don't use it, but a lot of clients now are you using it? How's that reflected in my work? I think the clients are moving on the pendulum. And so there's more expectation. But there is no doubt that when I meet with our associates around the world, they are asking to use the tools. They don't want to be a dinosaur. They also really do want a lawyer in a different way, Daniel. And so we've talked a lot about the need and the even more enhanced need for emotional quotient and lawyers that have deep, deep empathy, because the machines are going to do more of the analytical work. But, like doing the research, getting things laid out for you, that will come to you. But then I think the lawyer that is going to win in the future is someone who really can relate well to the client, understands how to explain things simply, complex things simply, can solve problems using all of the research that's maybe done through artificial intelligence and the like, but can pull it together and be very, very pointed and help a client navigate the complex situation, which is using a whole set of the human condition and deep empathy, EQ skills, navigating complex politics, et cetera. So that's what we need. And we're talking a lot about that. How do we hone in on those skills? Sometimes one of my Mexican colleagues called them soft skills. I'm not sure that's the right term because I sort of feel like they're more integral than a soft skill is sort of like a nice to have. To me, these are must-haves. And we're going to be doing a lot more in terms of training up in this area too. So more to come on this. So there is a big demand by our clients for tech-enabled solutions. So, earlier we mentioned that there are, bodies of laws being enacted, even on artificial intelligence. The EU has come out, 27 states, right, or 27 countries at once, where they're going to adopt rules that govern AI. They have rules that govern, global data and privacy and a whole bunch of other things. Clients love it if you can come with some kind of a tech-enabled solution. Maybe you input their data, you can see their landscape, some Power BIs, show them how these rules would impact them, and it leads to more work. And they want it to be tech-enabled. And honestly, the complexity of some of these situations, you need to have this. So we want to be able to show the power of our breadth. We have 35 more countries in our firm than the next nearest law firm, which is a huge advantage for us. And so, if we can bring that power to clients who are maybe thinking, how can I get a handle on this, cutting edge issue? And we can bring it through a tech-enabled solution. I think that will help us, again, be the firm of choice when they're looking for somebody to help them navigate these complex areas.
In the spirit of being tech-enabled and having so many countries, you sort of have the first mover advantage in some fashion. In the 9 months that you've been at Dentons, have you heard the other lawyers, whether they be partners, associates, C-level, et cetera, who have talked about since 2020, since the pandemic, that there have been shifts, whether small incremental steps or very large shifts in what the client expects from the law firm? Is it any different, or is it just the same, pandemic's over, back to normal?
I think we talk about this a lot, Daniel, at Dentons. Our clients' expectations, I think, have only risen since the pandemic. I think there's just an expectation of accessibility that has even gone up another notch in the last 4 or 5 years. And so, helping our lawyers and all of our people deal with that is important. So people still stay mentally well and healthy, but at the same time are incredibly responsive. And so when you think about what the pandemic did, it made organizations adopt technology, whether it's, Teams or Zoom or, all the other platforms that are out there. Companies adopted that and used it in a record amount of speed. What would have taken us probably 10 years to get adoption, we got done in a matter of months. And so I think we all had that experience. And so that's been amazing. But I do think the pace of change and the speed of response and, still has to be incredibly high quality. And I do think in a global organization, making sure that our clients feel us the same way, regardless of the location to which we're rendering the service. They're expecting the same high quality standards, whether you're getting advice in the US, the UK, or Mauritius, Africa. They want that same level of responsiveness. And so we spend a lot of time talking about what that means to be, a Dentons lawyer and how quickly you have to respond and how you deal with that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes. We're always staying abreast of all the law changes, for sure. It's hard to predict. In some ways, the U.S. is deregulating and trying to, encourage technology, and they want to be the crypto capital of the world. So we have a great crypto practice. We have a lot of lawyers that specialize in that all over the world, and, very tied up, well-coordinated group, if you will, of lawyers who have passion and just a lot of expertise in this area. So we're very careful, though. You have to be. We have a great brand. We want to make sure that we abide by all the laws. But I think that's where we have our competitive advantage. We know the laws in 86 countries, and we're continuing to grow our footprint. And, we've got that sort of figured out. I find that so many clients want to know how we did it in-house because they're looking to do it for their business operations. And, everybody's talking about the data fabric and, how do you get organized so that you don't trip a big, fault line and have a big problem.
Where do you see, Kate, the role of the lawyer and other legal professionals, but mainly the lawyer, right? As you embark on this wonderful journey of yours in shaping the future of, as we just talked about, data privacy or cybersecurity or Gen AI or any other sort of, as we call it, tech-enabled, processes. Because we don't really look at the legal profession as a whole as being very innovative, but here we are. And in this whole conversation with you, Kate, I'm marveled by the fact that really there's a strong emphasis on thinking about tech enablement. There's a strong emphasis on innovating with your leadership. And so what is that role for the lawyer? Is it the lawyer's role to help drive, change, to be a change maker in the face of all this technology, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I think that a really great lawyer is a creative problem solver. And we talk a lot about that at Dentons. We're sort of putting pieces of puzzles together, and sometimes they feel like they're 3D or very, very complicated puzzles. And so this too, this is where the next evolution is, and we need to be part of that. And I think that the lawyer who's trusted by their client gets what the client's trying to do and can help them get enabled to get there is going to be, a sought after lawyer, always doing it with, the right ethics and doing it smartly. Those to me are table stakes, that goes almost without saying, but it's the appropriate level of creativity. And that's what I love about Dentons is there's no shortage here in our law firm for creative lawyers. It is amazing what we have going on. And they have the license. What I love about the entrepreneurial feeling of this firm is they are encouraged and have the license to try new things out. And then, are not shy about saying, hey, I just did this. It worked out really well. Client loved it. Really, game changing. And then, we share it and use it as a best practice so that others can follow it. So I think lawyers sometimes get mislabeled, Daniel. I think they're very innovative and they can help shape this wonderful world that we live in and make it better. We like to understand business models. We like to lean into the sectors to which we're serving and make sure we truly understand them. We give better advice when we do that. And so the more that we can learn from others, and also at the same time, it's a twofer. We're helping our clients, but if we can also make the backbone of Dentons, more efficient and better, that's a wonderful thing.
I would be remiss if we didn't circle back to, as we near the end of this recording with you, to talk about your leadership a little bit more. Reflecting on your journey throughout your entire career, what pivotal leadership lessons have shaped who you are today, and how might some of those moments help ignite the path for the next generation of leaders?
I think one of the things that was really pivotal through my career is don't underestimate the value you get from what I call reverse mentorship. So I had a lot of mentors who were mentoring me. They were more senior in the organization. I got a lot of feedback. I quickly, especially when I was trying to make partner, realized the difference between mentors and a sponsor, somebody who would use their political capital to get me promoted. And so I saw that need and dealt with that and got promoted and what have you. But sometimes that's not obvious. I just want to make sure that that nugget is out there. But the other thing, that I would say was incredibly valuable is people who reported to me. I always had an environment that they were free to tell me, like, Kate, why don't we try something different? And one of my favorite pieces of reverse mentorship was, I think I was a pretty young manager and I was into like client delight. If the client said we needed, I need you to look at this and say, great, we'll get back to you tomorrow. And so, we got off a conference call. Those were the days where we had, the little round thing on the desk and we hung up. And so my senior said to me, Kate, could you try on the next call to ask the client, when does he need it? Because maybe he could have waited one more day. We're up to our eyeballs and how much work. And I was like, I know it sounds like such an obvious thing, but I was so grateful. I was like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about that because I just want this guy to continue to use our firm for services. And so I thought he needed it the next day. I made a huge assumption. So anyway, long story short, I started to do that and we started to breathe a little more. I was like, oh my God, we can actually, still delight the client, but we could have delivered in maybe 2 days at the time, would have been still extraordinary and keep them with us. So anyway, it was one of those things. So I always say, make sure the people that report to you, you ask them for feedback, because sometimes that's the richest feedback that they can give, because they see things, they hear things that you might not hear. People might not tell you as a leader. One of the things as the global CEO, I never want to be like the empress without clothes on, like something's going on that I don't know because people are afraid to come and talk to me. To me, that's a disaster. And so I always want a team that feels comfortable, just telling me, even if it's not what I want to hear, I'd rather know it. And then you can deal with it and figure out how you adjust.
Before we let you go, Kate, can you tell me, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want the legacy at Dentons to make the firm more stronger, make an impact on the globalization effort. So our people are just getting the wonderful experiences of working on global clients, having that cross-cultural. I have learned so much as a professional, but even more importantly, as a person, by working on global matters. I've done that. I've traveled since, I was in my first year at my previous firm. I was in Asia working on structures as a very young lawyer in the tax practice. And so I just think that is so much fun and how much you learn. So I want to make sure our people have the best experience. We do more global work, and that the firm continues to thrive and carries on for generations to come. So we have a lot to do, but we have a very great group of leaders and people. And so I think the future is very bright at Dentons.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you for the invitation, Daniel. It was delightful to meet you.
Thanks for joining us on BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast.
If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe for more episodes.
On BDO.com, you'll find all of our episodes, transcripts, and ways to continue the conversation.
Until next time, this has been another episode of BDO's Legal Tech Talk.